Good morning, everybody, and welcome to day 2 of the Cosmetics Innovation Forum. I'm going to swap between microphones, so please excuse me. Hello. I see some familiar faces and a couple of new people. Today, for those who weren't here yesterday, is going to be split into 2 different sections and 2 different rooms. Next door, we have the R&D innovation, and in this room, we're going to focus on marketing and branding. But I'm sure you're free to jump from one to the other. Before we start, I'd just like to say thank you to Simba for organising the 2 days, and also to all of the sponsors that you can see on these 2 boards who helped make this happen. I'm going to start with a quote that I like, which is from a former CEO of Coca-Cola. And he was talking to a reporter, and the reporter said to him, how do you sleep at night? And he said, I sleep like a baby. The reporter said, that's great, I'm really glad to hear that. And he says, no, what I mean is I wake up every 2 hours and I start crying. And the reason he said that, and the reason a lot of us feel like that, I think, is the fact that the rate of change is accelerating a lot faster than we are comfortable with. And there's a lot of words on that chart there that you can see. There are issues and topics that people in our industry are continually talking about. Things like big data, things like m-commerce, e-commerce, things like the gap between interaction and transaction. And the fact is, change is accelerating a lot quicker than our ability to keep learning and keeping up with that change. And in an environment like that, there's 2 things that we need to do. One, organize ourselves in ways that are a lot more flexible and a lot more fluid so that we can react to change. So I know I run an organization across Asia Pacific. I know that my structure today will probably be very different to the structure I'm going to need in 6 months' time or a year's time. And also, it drives the need for innovation, which is what these 2 days are all about. Also, over the next however many hours that we're here today, we've got a number of different experts who are going to talk to you about those topics that were on the previous chart, and hopefully help you sleep a little bit better at night. At the opening of the Nanjing Games, Summer Olympic Games, the president stood up and said, everybody is media. Everyone is media. And then he invited a number of people on stage and everyone in the audience to take pictures of themselves, take selfies and post them on Twitter and Facebook and various social networks. Now, I know that you're quite a shy audience, so I'm not going to ask you to join me on stage and take a selfie and post it, unless anyone really wants to. Okay, good. Because I'm not great at taking selfies myself. But the point is that if you want to, unlike most presentations, if you want to keep your mobile phones on, please feel free to do so. Okay, keep them silent. It would be better if they're not ringing. But if you want to keep your mobile phones on and actually take pictures or videos or whatever and tweet and post, please feel free. The point is, with that, is that we are all publishers. We all post on the internet, whether we think we do or we don't. And if you ask a lot of people, do they put things on the internet, they'd probably initially say, no, I don't. But actually, we do. If we're a member of any social website at all, we post pictures, we post words, we post comments. We may post recommendations on travel sites or something like that. So we are all publishers, whether we like it or not. And the total web doubles in size every 4 months. And that rate of growth is only going to get faster. The rate of growth and change today is the smallest it's ever going to be. But it's not really about digital marketing. It's more about how we market ourselves effectively in a digitally convergent world, and how that marketing leads to business results and business sales. Which leads on to our first topic. Now, luckily, I'm presenting I'm the first presenter of the day, so I don't need to introduce anyone. But it brings us on to the topic of the growing role that media plays in building brands and in building business in this digitally convergent world. I'm going to start with a video.
Dat lief?
Ik voel 2 insecten op je rug. Kan dat?
Ja, vlinders.
Slovenie? Een moto. Oranje. Pas erop. Zenit. Oui, bien. Je hebt een vriendin. Julie. Ja. Hoe in het liefdesleven? 3, 4.
De vierde, daar zei ik meestal over, dus dat weten niet veel mensen.
Plus. Maison rouge, balcon. Blanc. Ja. Ik zie geld, ik zie transacties, maar kent je rekeningnummer van buiten? Ik denk dat ik het wel weet. Er staat wel negatief op je bankrekening.
Ja?
9, 7. Last month, you spent €200 on alcohol. Vorige maand €300 aan kleding gespendeerd. 8,
Ja.
5 voor een huis dat van eigenaar gaat veranderen. Zijn waarschijnlijk €90.000. Ja, eigenlijk. 41.
Ja.
Serieus?
Ja, dat is het. Oh my god. Oh man. Ah, dat is heel eng.
I didn't show you that to scare you. It is a bit scary, but I didn't do it for that reason. But on average, we pass over 3,000 pieces of personal information into databases on the internet every week. Now, none of us in this room would actually sign a paper contract without probably a lawyer present or at least having read that contract. But we do it every day on the internet. We click terms and conditions without ever reading most of the information. Or I don't know, maybe some of you do, but I don't. If I join a social network, it says, please tick here to confirm the following. You just do it. That means that we all give over personal information without thinking, and it's all there for people to use. Now, there's elements of that that's scary. There's elements of that's an opportunity. And the reason we do that is because there's two forces that have completely changed our world. And we need to be able to master these two themes or two forces if we're going to succeed going forward. And those two forces are globalization and convergence. Now, globalization is nothing new. Most people in this room either work for global organizations, and I saw from the list there's people from L'Oreal, from Unilever, etc., global companies. There's also people in this room from local companies who are looking to expand their footprint geographically. However, I think probably more profound is the impact that convergence and the convergence of technology and media is having not only on all of our lives, but on our business. It impacts the way that we interact with each other as human beings, the way that we deal with our friends, the way that we contact our families. But also, it totally changes the way that we interact with brands and brand businesses. It totally changes the way that we have to build our business and build our brands if we're going to be successful going forward. And because of this, everything is an awful lot more interconnected, interdependent, and more transparent than ever before.
What is the next big thing? Isn't a thing at all. It's lots of things, all waking up. Becoming part of a global phenomenon we call the Internet of Everything. Trees will talk to networks, will talk to scientists about climate change. Cars will talk to road sensors, will talk to stoplights about traffic efficiency. The ambulance will talk to patient records, will talk to doctors about saving lives. It's going to be amazing and exciting and maybe most remarkably, not that far away. The next big thing, we're going to wake the world up and watch with eyes wide as it gets to work. Cisco, tomorrow starts here.
As a result, consumers are drawn to brands in new ways. Media and communications is a lot more searchable, social, mobile than it's ever been before. As a result, content, and I see later there'll be conversations about this, content now plays a much bigger role in terms of how consumers look at your brands. They're less influenced by traditional advertising than they are by content that doesn't necessarily or isn't necessarily produced by yourselves. It may be produced by other people talking about your brands. And e-commerce. Now, China leads the way in terms of e-commerce. It has the biggest percentage of e-commerce of any country in the world. And Asia is rapidly growing in this area. It was quite late to jump on e-commerce. Western Europe probably has been more familiar with buying things online for a longer period of time. But the acceleration of growth and the number of people now buying online, and predominantly through mobile and increasingly through mobile, has grown significantly in Asia Pacific. It means that we have to manage our conversations with clients 24 hours a day, every day of every year, and we have to do this through totally connected ecosystems or communication ecosystems. And therefore, we have to be very careful. We can no longer do any of this in isolation. We have to make sure that we deliver and continue to deliver relevant brand messages through bought media, traditional advertising, for example. However, that has got to be very closely linked to the experiences that people have in your own space, be that in your own retail store, be that within a concession within a retail store, be that your own website. And then as a brand, our role is to continue to facilitate conversations in the earned and owned space. Now, some people would put a fourth column on there called shared. I actually think it's a subset of earned. But that area is something that is becoming increasingly influential in terms of how people perceive your brand and whether they buy your product. As a result, media is playing a much more significant role than ever before in delivering business value and in driving your business. And there's three factors that I'm going to touch on. There are more, but there's only three that I'm going to touch on today that have an impact on your industry. The first, from a brand perspective, is how we leverage media data and this increasing amount of data that is available to us to engage to identify and engage your most valuable consumers at scale and increasingly in real time. From a business perspective, then, leveraging the closing gap between the first interaction, or the zero moment of truth, as Google call it, and transaction, to drive incremental sales and increase your return on investment. And the third, then, is how we organize ourselves to future-proof through integration of specializations. All of our industry continues to both consolidate and fragment. There are more and more specializations growing up every single day. And we need to keep on top of those. And the only way we can do that is if we find working structures that enables us to bring people together to collaborate more. Because no one organization can manage all of these things effectively. They all need to outsource certain elements of it, and they all need to find working processes to bring people together to ensure that we deliver seamlessly across the whole bought, owned, earned ecosystem. So, I'm just going to give a couple of quick examples on each of those three areas. Data. First of all media is becoming digital. TV will be digital. What we think of media and what we think of digital media, actually there should be no separation. All media is becoming digital. And with digital comes data. And data will play a bigger and bigger role. Now, there's lots of talk about big data. I think there's a lot of rubbish talked about big data personally, because I think big data largely is dead data unless you find a way of actually converting that into insights that drive business results. And I think sometimes we get scared by the whole task of drilling through, of working through all of the data that is available to find something that's actually relevant. There was a report done by Gartner recently where they talked to a number of global CMOs around the world, and they predicted by 2017 CMOs will be spending more money on technology than CIOs. And that completely changes things. It takes the little geeks who used to work in the basement that never really spoke to anyone, who worked on data and technology, and brings them front and center in terms of business strategy. And global CEOs are going to be much more focused on data than ever before, because it translates into business results. It allows us to target and follow individuals more closely. We're moving away from talking to people that we assume wanted to hear our messages and assumed may be our customers, to known individuals, and not only finding them, but getting a much better understanding of what influences them most. Here's a quick example from the US. It's from a company called Target. For those of you who are not familiar, they're a huge retailer. They're involved in everything. They sell everything from lawnmowers to cosmetics. And this is a quick example of how they've used data and analytics to help them drive better sales.
Did you know that by studying shoppers' habits, companies can predict what you want to buy? And sometimes that's a problem. A few years ago, for instance, a father walked into a Target store in Minnesota, clutching an advertisement. He started yelling at the manager. "Did you send this to my daughter?" he asked. The ad contained all these coupons for baby clothes, bottles, formula, and cribs. She's still in high school and you're sending her ads for baby clothes? He screamed at the manager. Are you trying to encourage her to get pregnant? The store manager apologized, and a few days later called the guy to apologize again. The father was somewhat abashed. It turns out there's been some activities in my house that I wasn't aware of, he told the manager. I had a long conversation with my daughter. She's due in August. It turns out I owe you an apology. Target had created a computer model that could figure out which shoppers were pregnant just by studying their shopping habits. Identifying pregnant women is the holy grail of retail. People with new babies are so tired that if you can get them inside their doors to buy bottles and formula, they'll end up buying everything else they need as well. And if a new parent starts shopping at Target, they'll keep coming back for details. So how did Target start marketing to parents before the baby arrived? Lots of people buy the notion. But a Target data analyst noticed that women on Target's baby registry started buying very large quantities of lotion in about their second trimester. Someone else noticed that in about their 20th week, pregnant women started loading up on vitamins. By crawling through the data, Target was able to identify about 25 different items that, when analyzed together, would allow them to predict if someone was pregnant. Target's program was so accurate that it could assign almost any regular shopper a pregnancy prediction score. But the problem with all this data, as the father in Minnesota demonstrated, is that Target couldn't let on how much they knew. After all, shoppers might get a little bit upset if they received an advertisement making it clear that Target was studying their reproductive plans. So how did Target solve this problem? They started mixing in ads for bottles, formula, with other products that had nothing to do with pregnancy, like lawnmowers and wine glasses, things that they knew a pregnant woman wouldn't necessarily be interested in. As a result, the baby ads looked random, and it worked. Women started using the coupons, and Target's mom and baby sales exploded. The lesson? Habits matter. And we can either choose to shape our habits ourselves, or we can wait till someone else shapes them for us.
Okay, that was a quick example of how we can use data to identify and target our most valuable consumers at scale in real time and something that's very easily translated into the cosmetics and beauty industry. Combining to that and how we then use that data to close the gap between interaction and transaction to drive sales and ROI. And as part of this, I'm going to talk very quickly about programmatic and real-time bidding, which essentially is using automated technologies to help us evolve the way that we target and retarget our consumers, buy, and then connect. And the opportunity with programmatic is to move away from buying websites, which is what we used to do, to buying people. The traditional way of buying digital media was very much a sort of spray and pray approach. It was put your ads in websites that we think would be interesting to our target consumers, be that the electronic versions of quality magazines, for example, or travel, or any area that we believed was particularly interesting to our target audience. And really using those websites as a proxy for users. Using programmatic, we're now able to hyper-target, reach the desired consumer and the desired audience wherever they may be and on whatever platform that they use, and also use that data to better understand what messages are going to be specifically relevant to that target. Now, if you blinked your eyes, imagine how quick that took you. Okay? This is an automated process, and this video just shows you what happens in the blink of an eye, or actually quicker than the blink of an eye. Oh, hang on.
Welcome to 200 milliseconds, the life of a programmatic ad impression. Jane Doe clicks on a URL and the publisher's content begins to load in browser. Publisher may find information it has stored on Jane Doe, possibly in its data management platform, or DMP. Publisher sends available information to its ad server, asking ad server whether an ad campaign is available that would target Jane Doe. If there is a campaign matching Jane Doe's profile, an ad is served. If no campaign targets Jane Doe, the server seeks to match the impression, programmatically requesting response from selected traders, ad networks, and supply-side platforms, or SSPs. If the impression is not cleared, the server may seek to clear the impression in a programmatic direct way via private exchanges. If the impression is again not cleared, the request is sent to an open ad exchange in hopes of achieving liquidity. Open Ad Exchange sends a bid request containing information on Jane Doe's browser, website URL, and ad type to multiple bidders, including traders, ad networks, and demand-side platforms, or DSPs. Each bidder processes bid request, overlays it with additional user data and marketers' targeting and budget rules. Each bidder's algorithm evaluates the request, selects the creative, and sends it along with optimal bid price to Ad Exchange. Ad Exchange selects winning bid from bidders' responses through second price auction. Ad Exchange sends winning ad URL and price from winning bid to Publisher's ad server. Publisher's ad server tells Jane Doe's browser which ad to display. Jane Doe's browser pulls ad from winning bidder's ad server and sends matching ad to browser. Browser displays web page, including matching ad. Winning bidder's ad server receives ad tag data on Jane Doe's initial interaction experience. And that is 200 milliseconds, the life of a programmatic ad impression. For more information, visit us at MediaCrossing.com.
Now, I can't do that. Not in that speed, anyway. It does mean that our industry, from a media perspective, for example, the industry that I work in is completely changing. It means it's going much more like being a brokering company. And that has massive implications in terms of my business, in terms of the people that I hire, in terms of the structures that I put in place, etc. But what that means is we're using that technology to help us drive better business performance through hyper-targeting, and that means that we can target very, very specifically against attitudes and behaviors at scale, drive better media value, and continue to optimize that media value. But more importantly as well, then, is make sure that the messages that we put out to our target audience are particularly relevant to what they want to do, and if they're not relevant, change them, or actually move away from that consumer if they're not going to respond, to help us drive better business performance. Within that, there's the opportunity to target specific occasions through searchable content and use that programmatic data and programmatic platforms to identify and serve the right videos, the right content to the right audience at the right time on a digital platform. You know, if you take bridal, for example, and the areas that a bride is particularly interested in, there's times that they will be specifically interested in terms of beauty products, that they're particularly relevant, and there's times where they're going to be focused on other things. This data allows us to know exactly when and on what platforms and where they're going to be most responsive to that type of information and that type of content, and also the type of content that is most impactful to them actually jumping on and buying something. Within that as well, there's new technologies that allows us to embed shoppable video into these sites that help close the gap even more between interaction and transaction and help drive e-commerce conversion. Now, this is an example from the UK. It's a CAM winner. We've been doing this in China as well with L'Oreal. And even though the example from the video is about clothing, I think the leap of faith to show how that could translate into cosmetics is very simple, very straightforward.
ASOS faced a daunting challenge: how to generate big Christmas sales with no high street outlets and without a big budget. And on top of that, they needed to raise their brand profile in tough new markets. So we went to work. We knew the target audience had a passion for fashion, music, and a good time, so we engaged them with a winning concept: the ASOS Best Night Ever. We recruited an incredible new sales team, and then put them in videos featuring new shoppable technology. So now, wherever the videos were seen on paid for or even social media, the audience could click and buy wherever they happened to be. The fans loved it, and the videos were watched by millions. We used the real-time data to fine-tune the merchandising and optimise sales, making sure the right products found the right people at the right time and on the right device. It all worked brilliantly and had an immediate impact on sales, tripling ROI in just 2 weeks and growing exciting new markets. ASOS became a new favourite shopping destination and showed for the first time how content and commerce can work together to create the best sales ever.
This also extends to geo-targeting, leveraging push message targeting. There's another acronym in our industry at the moment going around called SOLOMOCO, which is basically social, location, mobile commerce, to help maximize opportunities close to the point of purchase. And this means that we can target messages through mobile, specifically to the consumer when they're in the retail store, maybe at an event, a specific concession or wherever. And we're doing this a lot in this industry in China. We've done a partnership with WeChat that's using geo-targeting on social messages like WeChat that enables us to then deliver relevant promotional offers and messages to that consumer when they're in a location where they can potentially buy and drive incremental footfall in store. The other example I'm just going to show quickly in terms of closing this gap between interaction and interaction is some retail innovation. Retail doesn't necessarily have to be in a fixed location. It can move around. These are vending machines that are being produced at the moment and being distributed around a number of markets that link social to mobile transactions. And they give gifting opportunities as well. So not only do you have to buy for yourself, you can buy and you can send it to another vending machine in another city or another country. So say you've got a friend in Singapore, where I live, and you wanted to send them a gift, you can by mobily through this organisation, through these retail units. Okay. Moving on to the third area that I mentioned at the beginning, which is how do we organize ourselves to integrate those specializations better to ensure that we deliver seamless communications across the whole bought, owned, earned ecosystem. Now, I'm just going to touch on one example here, because in the time that we've got, we can't go through all of them. It's about creating flexible, fluid, new structures that aren't necessarily going to be fixed. We have our own organizational structure, and I said from a personal perspective, ours is changing almost every 6 months. We're also looking at building structures that we can dip in and out for clients at specific times that are relevant either in a moment or long term. These actually are long-term structures within an organization. And it's about creating almost like a permanent war room where you co-locate individuals from all of your agency partners and from a client's perspective. So if you imagine having someone, if you work for L'Oreal, for example, you have people from your own organization in a room with people from advertising agencies, media agencies, PR agencies, etc. And you basically stay there and get very bored because all you're doing is you are listening to conversations that's going on the web. You're looking at real-time analytics of social data, search data, what your competitors are doing, brand conversations, etc. In real time, you can then develop content and distribute that content and link it directly to e-commerce and n-commerce. Now, here's a very quick example. During the Super Bowl 47, the lights went out. The game stopped. There were about 100 million people watching on TV who suddenly couldn't watch the game anymore. They turned to social media. One tweet went out, and it was created by people in these war room engines, as we call them. One tweet, and that was basically the tweet that said, with Oreo, you can still dunk in the dark. And the thing with Oreo, for those of you who are aware, and Oreo I know is very big in China, is you dunk it. You break it and you dunk it in your tea or your coffee. That one tweet cost nothing. No media spend at all, and it generated over $500 worth of value through global press coverage, retweets, people sharing that tweet with other people, with their friends through things like Facebook and various equivalents around the world, and drove massive, massive value for that product. All of those were in 1 hour. So very briefly, those conversation engines, and sorry, the formatting of changing computers has thrown off a couple of words, is essentially about how those teams take existing offers, assets, and content, and then use that to address very, very specific business needs and KPIs. It allows us to do predictive hyper-targeting, drive messages at real time at scale, continue to optimize and improve through data analytics, and drive better business results. And again, we're doing this in the cosmetics and beauty industry by leveraging real-time tracking and optimization to drive better business, course-correcting in real time our activities in terms of what we're doing. We can test and learn and respond incredibly quickly. That's it for my part. I'm just going to show you the final chart, the 3 areas that I think are particularly relevant to this industry, about how we leverage data to identify and engage your most valuable consumers in real time, at scale, using that data to close the gap between interaction and transaction to drive better sales and ROI, and an example of a way that we can organize ourselves to do that and to deliver seamless communications across the bought, owned ecosystem.